Um, so your kid's been invited to another kid's house for a party, or maybe you're planning on hosting a party, or your kid's planning on hosting a party. What should you teach them about parties? My name is Brian L. Jackson. I'm a Tulsa attorney, and I want to talk. This one is is my third video that goes out to parents of young people, particularly if you have teenagers. And I want to talk specifically about the house party and other types of events like that, and some special considerations. Um, I would say as a number one thing with parties, obviously, young people are going to at some point in their young lives while they're still young, get invited to one of these events, and it's part of growing up. And I'm not sitting here saying you should never go to parties, but there are some risks involved that could lead to a police encounter, and your child should be aware of these risks and how to mitigate and or avoid them. Obviously, the same rules I talked about in my last two videos apply. The cops start questioning your child because when they're present at a party, they should know how to assert their right to remain silent. Again, the phrase to learn is, "Officer, with all due respect, I'm going to decline to answer any questions at this time. I'd like a lawyer." And then the next thing out of their mouth probably ought to be to inquire of the cop, "Am I being detained or am I free to go?" Some other considerations with parties. Uh, there's no easy way to say this, but we shouldn't, as adults of parents of children, be naive. Teenage parties, alcohol is consumed at them at least some of the time. Some types of parties are more likely to have alcohol, but it is a factor. And you should be aware, and your child should be aware, it is a crime for them to drink alcohol. That is a crime. Now, it is not the most serious crime they can get busted for, but nevertheless, it is a crime. So, obviously, the lawful thing to do is for them not to consume alcohol. Also, they should be cautious about being in the proximity of other minors who are consuming alcohol, because again, that's one of those situations, suspicious circumstances that could get them searched, it could get them detained, it could get them arrested. And even if they really weren't committing a crime and they have a good defense, it costs money to defend criminal cases. It can cost a lot of money, like in the thousands of dollars, a lot of money, even for misdemeanors. So the best bet is don't be around that. However, if your child has consumed alcohol, then they should have a plan in mind, or if they've consumed anything else that's intoxicating. I mean, I'm going to say alcohol, but this also goes for things like weed, any kind of pills, any other drugs that have any kind of a psychoactive effect. And what I mean by that is that they'll get you high, they'll get you stoned, they'll get you drunk. And that can also include some over-the-counter substances like Benadryl. So if they have consumed something and they are impaired, and impaired can also, by the way, mean being high on speed. So that's something else to be aware of. If they are impaired, they should have a plan ahead of time on how they're going to get themselves home. Because obviously driving is a really bad idea and something to be aware of. If you are underage and you have a detectable amount of alcohol in your blood, you're probably going to get arrested for DUI. Also, if you have a detectable amount of any other intoxicating substances, like the ones I just listed off, you are probably DUI drug and you're going to get arrested. And DUI is what's called a predicate misdemeanor, which means first offense, it's a misdemeanor. You get convicted and then you get popped again, it's felony. So this is something to be aware of. So have a plan. If you're going to do that, how are you going to get home? Now my suggestion to you as parents, and I'm not trying to tell you how to parent your kids, but it would be worth considering having a somewhat limited amnesty policy when it comes to your kid and this type of behavior. Not because you want to endorse it or encourage it, but because at the end of the day, you want to be damn sure your kid gets home in one piece. So, and you want them to feel like they can reach out to you and call you for a ride, because you're going to be probably their first resource if they're impaired and they're running through the back of their head. Well, shit, what am I going to do? Call mom, call dad. So you might consider that. An alternative is set them up with an app like Uber where they can dial a ride. What I would not suggest with minors is that they appoint a designated driver, because all it takes is for that person to say screw it and have a drink or take something, particularly like if they think, oh, well, I can just snort this, this is Adderall, I'll snort that, I'm not going to be impaired. Wrong idea. So you don't necessarily want them catching a ride home with friends that are, quotes, designated drivers, because the risk is if that child chooses to be irresponsible, they could put your child's safety in jeopardy and everybody could get arrested. I would also advise against walking home. Oklahoma law does make being in public in an intoxicated state a crime. It's called public intoxication. Now, in my experience, at least with adults who are of legal imbibing age, in other words, if you're legal drinking age, typically if you're drunk in public and not causing a problem, the cops won't bother you. A minor could be a very different situation because of certain laws under Title 10A that deal with a legal duty to protect children from harm. The cops find your child out in public and they're smashed, they may not have a choice. And their options come down to ignore it or arrest the kid. And there's a distinct possibility your child could be arrested for public intoxication. So walking home is probably not a good idea. Also, that comes with certain safety concerns as well. But they should have a plan on how they're going to get home. And preferably one that does not involve relying on one of the other kids at the party to be responsible and not drink, and it shouldn't rely on walking home. There are some special considerations that come into play when you're talking about hosting. Something to be aware of, parents. If you serve alcohol at your child's party full of underage minors, you could be both criminally and civilly liable for furnishing alcohol to minors, especially if somebody ends up getting hurt or killed. So, best advice, do not host a party at your house where there is alcohol consumption, or for that matter, drug consumption, because you could be liable. Also, some other things to be aware of if you're hosting: keep your doors locked. Have one point of entry and exit. You do not want a bunch of random doors open for a couple of reasons. One, you want to control who's coming and going and what they're bringing in. But also, if the police do get called out to your residence, you don't want a back door open because they may let themselves in. So, and once they're in the house, if they see something that is suspicious, that's what's called the plain view exception. In other words, they don't need a warrant in order to, at that point, conduct a search. Plain view could be any number of things. Half-drunk bottles of alcohol could trigger a plain view exception if there's a bunch of minors at a party. Bong, leafy substance in a bag, suspicious powders, other types of paraphernalia like mirror and a razor blade. Pipes could be considered paraphernalia and could be probable cause that's in plain, or it could be evidence of a crime that's in plain view, thus triggering that exception. So, something to be aware of. You don't want to have the cops coming into the house. And with that point in mind, two other things to be aware of. Obviously, do not have your illegal stuff in plain view, or anything that looks suspicious in plain view. Put that shit away. Or better yet, don't have it. But at least put that shit away. Also, along the same lines, if the cops come to your door, and this rule goes pretty much any time, but particularly if there's a social event at your house, if the cops knock on your door, if they don't have a warrant, you do not have to let them in the door, and you shouldn't. Go outside and talk to them. And again, don't volunteer information. It should be a simple, very, pithy conversation, I guess would be the way I would put it. In other words, what seems to be the problem, they'll tell you. If there's a noise complaint, you know, tell them that you don't admit anything, but you can say, "I'll turn the stereo down." But if they don't have a warrant, you are under no obligation to live in the house, and you're better off not doing it, because you don't want to take a chance that they say they see or they smell something, because there is a plain smell exception too. For example, again, house full of teenagers and they smell tobacco, or worse, weed. Then that could get you searched. And if they find something, someone's going to jail. So a really good safety precaution is do not let them in the house. You don't, unless they have a warrant, then you do not have to. Now, if they do have a warrant, then you do have to let them in. And at that point, your best bet is to shut it, lawyer up if they start getting aggressive with you, and make it clear that you're going to cooperate, but you're not consenting to anything. And guys, if you have any questions about any of that, because I know I covered a lot of material, I would suggest, you can give me a call. My number is 918-585-1107. I am an attorney with the firm of Fry & Elder, and I'd be happy to help you out. Thanks, guys. Bye.